Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, brought to you by FantasyGuru.com, a part of the Elite Plus Network. Joined on the show, as usual, the man, the myth, the legend. You can find him on X at SeanE247. That's SEAN for Sean, the nice, easy way. Don't follow me on X, but you can find me there at Fantasy Bosco, all one word. I am still the Res Commissioner because, I don't know, Sean, I feel like we still got the Racing Entertainment Series mantra rolling on. I mean, it did change this past week, so we're still rolling with it. As usual, hey, please go to fantasyguru.com, click the subscribe button, check out all the different packages we got. Remember, baseball season is upon us, and the Major League Baseball guide is out.
Yes.
You get the musings of the one, the only, the Oracle Ray Flowers, among the rest of the folks on the staff. Jen was giving a shout out to Rob Povia's work contributing to the MLB stuff, so hat tip, Mr. Rob. We've got, I mean, honestly, Sean, football stuff is coming up. But if you want our racing content and you want to dabble in some hockey and some basketball, really all the sports that aren't Major League Baseball and the NFL, hey, for 12 months, you get it all for the one-time low price of $79.99. And look, a couple of weeks ago, Sean won all that money for you and then some. You could have paid for this year and next year with Sean's bet. So I've been on a little bit of a cold streak. I covered us the first couple of weeks, but thank goodness Sean's covering us now. I will get back in the groove, I promise.
Yep.
But we have tons of packages over there, Sean. I can't keep them all straight. Honestly, if I was new, I would just click subscribe, check out the packages, get a rough idea of what I wanted, and then I'd email support at fantasyguru.com, tell them what plans I was already on, what plans I wanted, and ask them for help. Just help point me in the right direction of what's the best fit for me. This is what I need.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Right? So how you doing, Sean?
I think overall it's been all right. You know, I've been doing a lot of grinding and plugging away. NASCAR season's been in full swing. A lot has been happening. And you know what? We got short track racing again. But it's not just any old short track. Let me see if this works here. But
it's Bristol, baby.
Bristol, baby.
Yeah, it's Bristol, baby.
There's a great one if you find of Casey Kane doing something like that too. He talks about just looking at the crowd, and it's Bristol, baby. And as a guy that was there when it's heyday, when you still had a waiting list to go and was a part of the world's largest wave that was done there, it really is like an old Roman Coliseum. It is super loud, Sean. I know some people like the noise, and I don't always wear the ear protection, but I tell you what, with good ear protection, there is no communicating. You know how you're with your buddies there and you're checking times, you have to figure out sign language, because even under caution, because it's such a small track and cars go all the way around. Look, Dick Berggren, I think, was right when he said, can we maybe put some mufflers on them at Bristol? Like, it's so loud, they call it Thunder Valley. Dr. Dick, I think maybe you're onto something, because it's a lot more fun to enjoy the race with your other fans that are there when you can at least share thoughts like, hey, he's slow now, or hey, he's moving. There is none of that under green flag. You better, and good luck texting. I don't know if they fixed the Wi-Fi, but I couldn't text either. I tried all of that.
Yeah, there you go. But Thunder Valley, last great Coliseum. This always used to be one of my favorite races to watch way back in the day when Bristol really was a show and a half worth watching every time it came around. But I know the racing is kind of a far cry from that, so here's hoping that's at least going to be halfway decent. That's the best I can hope for with short track racing.
Well, look, last year's spring race I thought was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you and I kind of talked about that pre-show here. I have no problem with only 6 cars on the lead lap. The fact that there was 30 or 50 some lead changes with only 6 cars finishing on the lead lap, I think tells a whole different story than what we're used to seeing. And quite frankly, I enjoyed watching the video game like racing with the new tires and the guys coming from the back through the field, and then seeing guys like Hamlin and Keselowski saving tires and managing them. Like, for me, I felt like more strategy became involved, right? Because there was a whole tire maintaining, when to take tires, etc. Skill involved. Drivers had to take care of the equipment. And quite frankly, it was fun watching guys on fresh tires. Like, it was pretty cool to see all the outside pass and the diving in and out. It was fun. I don't, like you and I were saying, they brought the same tire back for the fall race, which was the same tire from the previous fall race, to last year's spring race. And we had a total, I don't know what you want to call it, because I don't know if a crap show is a fair statement, because you and I both enjoyed it, but it was kind of crazy. It was not what anyone expected.
Yeah.
And they haven't been able to really mimic that tire wear again. You mentioned that they're going to go back to the PGA 1. I could be wrong on this, Sean, but I swear they went to resin last year or the year before, or something they call resin. I don't really know the chemical differences in these things. They make the track stickier where they put it. That much I can tell you.
Yeah.
But it's my understanding that the PGA 1 didn't have the same impact that the resin did, and that was part of the problem. They didn't think it was temperature or anything. So I'll be honest, Sean, I'm a little torn on what we can expect this weekend.
Yeah, if anything, there's kind of a whole mysterious element towards it, and basically figuring out what kind of racing at Bristol we're going to get. I think it's going to be kind of a little bit more closer to the fall, but not exactly the same as the fall, speculation-wise, because really the track conditions are different compared to that. We're going in a warmer climate, going in the spring months, so it's totally different track conditions compared to the fall at this place.
Well, historically, the fall has been very hot at Bristol. Now, we do run that race. We call fall, but it's really August, September. It used to always be August, right? Now they've got it in the playoffs. So it's a little cooler at night, but there's something else, Sean. We start the fall race in the daylight and run into night. We'll do this race 100% in the daylight. And look, this race has notoriously been chilly. I mean, we remember the one year it was delayed for snow, and then Kurt Busch won and did a snow angel on the track, right? That was pretty cool.
I remember that. Yeah, for sure.
And it was kind of funny because 2 weeks ago at the first real short track race, per my definition, it was pretty chilly in Martinsville. I mean, you saw people in hats and coats and all that. Then last week at Darlington, it was quite a bit warmer. And no, Darlington is known for eating tires, and we kind of skipped over, so we'll get more into Bristol later, but we should probably talk about Darlington a little bit. I thought it was a pretty good show overall, Sean. Thoughts?
I thought Darlington was not a bad show overall. Really wasn't that bad. You did actually see some movement throughout the field, and I will say this, Ryan Blaney certainly made things interesting to watch there for the longest while, especially with how he could carve through traffic. But, man, you have to feel for him with how that race ended.
Dude, don't get me going on that. I don't know if you saw the discussion between me and Fuzzy in the NASCAR Bet channel, man. I am still salty on that. And to be fair, look, William Byron did his best to stink up the show, right? I mean, to your point, I'm not going to call it a great Darlington race because while there was a lot of good racing action, it was basically from third on back for most of the day. First place was William Byron all day long. And then typical Darlington fashion, tire wear, pitch strategy, not as much fuel strategy because they were monitoring the tires a little more so, but the fuel and tire kind of going hand in hand. And I was asked in the channel, hey, pick one guy for a win. And I said, look, this is going to sound like it's coming out of left field, but I know you looked at all the practice times than I did. Blaney ran the most practice laps of anyone. He was fast on the shorter run, not as fast as some of the other guys like Byron, but on 10 and 20 laps, he was in the ballpark. But then as we went longer runs in practice, he was consistently the fastest guy, whether it was at 20, 25, or 30. He was consistently the fastest guy. So I felt like at 7.5 to 1, if we're going to make one bet, I want to bet. He doesn't have a record of doing well at Darlington. He doesn't necessarily get known for taking care of his equipment, but he's not a guy that beats up the equipment. And they obviously highlighted this race, or you're not practicing for 40 laps at a time, 30 laps at a time, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I said, look, it's going to sound like left field, but give me Ryan Blaney at 7.5 to 1. Let's ride. Sean, I mean, you nailed it. He was carving up the field. He had the best car. He took the lead with 4 laps to go.
Yeah. caution came out right as he got the lead. And then Larson just spun around. Man, Larson in this race was like, wow, totally not the Kyle Larson you usually see.
I was saying, for being voted the best car, paint scheme, he sure stunk it up on the track. I mean, you guys know I love Kyle Larson. He didn't even make it 5 laps around the track without dumping it. And I don't understand why he was pushing down on that apron like he was. I know it's a little tricky down there. Maybe that's his line and tires weren't up to temp yet or something. And I don't blame them. Denny Hamlin said this. I don't blame them for repairing the car, going back out there. We go back to Darlington for the playoffs, so they need to figure it out, whatever information they can. But that's the stuff we grew tired of 20 years ago when it was a start and park guy that refused to come in and get tires. They'd be the last car on the track, not getting tires, seeing how far they would go. They would cut a tire and bring out a caution, and it would change the whole dynamic of the race. Kyle Larson's not a back marker. He was on Sunday, and it's real unfortunate. And I don't think Larson did anything intentionally. I don't think there's any black helicopters trying to take a win from Blaney or give a win to Denny Hamlin or anything. What Hamlin proved to me, and I know people get really upset with Hamlin and don't like him. Hamlin is an old school racer, okay? He takes care of his equipment. He was going to be in the hunt. There's a reason you had him listed in your grouping, Sean. And I didn't do a top 4 group like I normally do. I wasn't feeling it. I really thought attacking top 10s was a better play. I was wrong. There's a reason you had him there, and it was valid. And we talked about it on the show. And I just saw a stat today. He's at 86 wins now.
Yeah, it's quite something there with Denny Hamlin, though. But I've always thought Hamlin is always a factor, regardless of how well he does in practice. Like, practice 100%. Is not a factor when it comes to Denny Hamlin at Darlington, because this was just one of his best racetracks. And even if you give him a crap car, he's going to find a way to make it fast.
Well, here's the deal. If you have to take care of tires and you got to find a way to be fast without putting it in the wall, there's only a handful of guys on that track that I would bet on weekly that do that. And they're the guys that used to work on their cars. They're team owners, the people that know how to do it. I mean, Kyle Busch is a little more kamikaze, if you will, in that regard. But honestly, he's got a great record there too. He's good on old tires, slick tires, right? Typically, Kyle Larson is too, unfortunately. He's just a checkers or wreckers guy. I'm with you. There was no reason not to have Hamlin. We talked about Hamlin. He was kind of floating around our discussion. Hat tip to Gibbs. You got a 3 in a row winner and now a back-to-back winner. And again, that's Darlington, to Sean's point. Take care of your equipment and have decent equipment. And look, it's not like JGR didn't. Ty Gibbs was running in the top 10. Chase Briscoe ran in the top 10 for a good chunk of the race. Christopher Bell looked decent through a good. And these are all drivers. Briscoe's run well there, but Gibbs and Bell have not necessarily been great at Darlington.
Bell's had good finishes at times, but Ty Gibbs especially, this was not one of his top tracks. But no, shout out to Ty Gibbs. He finally broke the streak. He finally broke the bad luck and got a top 10 for the first time since, I want to say, maybe almost before the playoffs began or just after the playoffs began last year.
Yeah. And really, Sean, he was 13th last week too, or the week before. Like, I had him for a top 10 bet and couldn't believe I put him in there, and he ended up 13th, just behind Zane Smith, I believe. Maybe it wasn't Zane, but he was right there at 12 or 13. So, look, Joe Gibbs is going to have fast cars at most tracks. I think Denny Hamlin's a factor at just about any track we go to, road course or otherwise. Short tracks are definitely his wheelhouse. I mean, he talked about running Martinsville and modifieds, things of that nature. I don't know that I look at Denny as a favorite for Bristol, but here again, last year when the tires became a factor, Denny felt like it was his race to lose.
Yeah.
And he kind of showed it, right?
Denny comes from a short track racing background himself too, a little bit. So he's good on these types of races, and he's all about taking care of his equipment. It showed at Darlington before, and it even showed at Martinsville, and he's going to go for 3 in a row now. And now we're talking about Joe Gibbs Racing because between him and Christopher Bell, they've won 5 of the 8 races so far this season.
Which is a lot. And I want to caution folks, okay? For betting purposes, don't go chasing JGR futures. All right. If, and I'm not suggesting anyone does this, if I was going to chase some futures, like NASCAR champion, team champion, because they do let you do that, manufacturer champion, that sort of stuff, this would be the time to start betting on Ford or Chevy, Hendrick or Penske, because all the momentum and all the stuff is pointing to JGR. Now, like Sean and I have talked about in the past, it's our opinion. It pays to do well, get your foundation, and don't be surprised if the 11 and the 20 hit a lull through the summer. That's the time to start betting them. We are of the belief they'll probably be testing. They'll be doing things to get information to apply to the playoffs, because at this point, we have never seen anybody with 2 or more wins not make the playoffs. So
yeah,
they're locked in. I hate the whole winning you're in, because that's kind of true, but not really. Whatever. These 2 guys, and William Byron too, because he's got 2, doesn't he?
No, he only has just the Daytona 500 win.
That's right. It was only 1. My bad. They're locked. And Gibbs now has the freedom to do a few things. 1, focus on the 54, focus on the 19, because they don't have wins yet, right? They can work on what can they do to be faster. And the chances, the thing is there's only one way to test these things, is trial and error. Sean, I will not be shocked if we go to somewhere where Bell historically runs well and all of a sudden it's a 20th place car. And my first thought is going to be, they took a swing at something significant and it didn't work. At the same time, I won't be shocked if we go someplace where Bell's been meh and all of a sudden he's a top 5 car all weekend. They have the luxury, right? It's an actual luxury at this point, right, Sean?
Truly.
To play, right? I mean, Chad Knaus openly admitted they did this back in Jimmy's heyday. So I don't know why you wouldn't do the same.
The only real reason why I think a team would be opposed to doing that is if they know they have multiple wins but are still in contention for the regular season title. Because that pays, we discussed it before, that pays out a good amount of playoff points as well, equivalent towards multiple wins in of itself too. So that also matters too. So I'd say it matters particularly for Bell and Hamlin in the regard, because both of them are not far off of the lead right there, especially Hamlin now too. So,
well, and here's the thing, Sean, we do go to races, or NASCAR goes to other tracks this year that are not in the playoffs. And some of them you could be considered sister tracks that you could play with stuff, and others you wouldn't. So, it also won't be shocking if we see a lull for 3 weeks and then a Christopher Bell win in a dominant fashion. You know what I mean? But yeah. I guess what I'm getting at is don't assume this isn't like the NFL, okay? When you start out 8-0, 10-0, there's a really high likelihood you're one of the best teams for the playoff run. It's pretty uncommon that you just completely collapse. It happens, but not regularly. Racing is very cyclical and is very much an ebb and flow. JGR's at the top right now. I don't think anybody can debate that. I don't think that maintains for the next 6 months.
I think where it's also going to come into play is when we go to other different track types. We're at track types right now where they're hot, where they know they got speed at. But I think when we start hitting some more of those, like say 1.5 miles or some of the really big tracks that are going to come up at the midpoint of the season, we might start to see them not show as much muscle in the win column or be at the front as much. And I think that's where Ford and Chevy are going to come in.
Well, up until recently, Ford's kind of dominated the big tracks, like where we go to next week, right? So I think that's a valid statement. Now, and Toyota has really, to your point, has really struggled at these tracks, right? I mean, really badly, whether it's Atlanta, they did okay this year, but last year, Atlanta, Talladega, Daytona, Toyota was significantly off. Now, I know they were bringing a new nose and all of that, and they definitely looked better, at Daytona. Vegas its own animal. I mean, the start-finish line being where it's at and everything else, I don't want to get the cart before the horse because we'll have plenty to talk about next week on that. But to your point, you know, it's just like Joey Logano and Penske last year. We knew Penske was formidable on the short tracks. We knew Penske was formidable on the super speedways. We really didn't look at Penske to be all that competitive at the 1.5 miles, and they struggled there, especially Joey Logano. Blaney had some speed, but Austin Cindric struggled there. And look, aerodynamics matter. Horsepower matters. You pointed out when they went to the new Ford motor, that made a huge difference as far as, you know, their competitiveness. Frankly, Sean, I'm kind of bummed because if you told me the whole NASCAR schedule was basically what we got for the last 5 weeks, I'd be ecstatic.
But it isn't. So here we are.
Yeah, but I mean, but to be fair to NASCAR, we got over the last 5 weeks, what did we get, right? Darlington, Martinsville, Miami,
Vegas,
which is one of the best 1.5 miles. So is Miami. And we had COTA, right?
Phoenix was before.
Okay.
After COTA.
Let's get rid of Phoenix and put COTA in. Because I do think I believe having 3 road races a year is perfect. Give me 3 of them. That's one every 12 weeks or whatever. If you want to change that number to 4, I'm okay with 4. You get up to 6, I think it's too much, Sean.
Well, at the very least, when we do go road racing, we go to all different types of tracks. That's the one thing I will give them credit for that.
That's fair. I mean, we got a street race. COTA, they shortened, which was very helpful, which is, it's a Formula One track. Sonoma's an old school road racing track, not really Formula One, but more for, not rally cars, sport mods, whatever you want to call it. I mean, Sonoma's been around a long time and has a long history with road racing. And I happen to think Watkins Glen is one of the most fun road course tracks around, period.
Then we got NASCAR's own contraption there with the Charlotte Roval. And then we're going to see how Mexico City goes later in the year, too.
Which Mexico City's in the realm of COTA, right? I mean, it's older, but it's more of an F1 circuit. That's where F1 used to go to back in the day, all that. So, I mean, it's in that ballpark. And I can appreciate the street racing, Sean. I don't get me wrong. It's cool seeing the skyline. But I got to tell you, from a track perspective,
yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings about it because I think it's very interesting as it is, but at the same time, it's not something you really think of when you think of NASCAR either. You know what I mean?
I guess maybe what I get stuck on, do you remember the old IndyCar Detroit Grand Prix at the Island?
I'm trying to remember.
It became a big deal because citizens were getting mad. You could only get around with the golf cart because it's on, what is the Isle of something? That, to me, was a cool street race. They used to do one, well, I think they still do. St. Petersburg is on the streets, right?
Yeah, that is.
My beef with the Chicago one is, when I look at it, if I just gave you a map of a road course, Sean, and put it down in front of you, didn't tell you where it was at, didn't give you the skyline or the elevation changes, I think you would look at the Chicago street race and be like, so we had a 5th grader line up the track? Is that what we're doing here? Because compared to the others, I'll call it lacks personality or uniqueness. It's a bunch of right-hand turns. There's not much else to it. There's only so much you can do on the roads in Chicago, don't get me wrong, but I feel like St. Petersburg, the Detroit Grand Prix, all of those were way more unique. Vegas, look at the Formula One race in Vegas, which I know was its own craptastic party, but I just feel like they did a better job, man. But
yeah, I mean, it's really the other thing too about Chicago is that it's always also been impacted by rain for pretty much most of the time too. So in a sense, rain has been kind of the identity of the track, if you ask me too.
Well, and you know what? To be fair, that first year in the rain, that was kind of a fun show. It got a little old seeing cars back themselves into tire barriers, but it was a pretty good show.
It was entertaining.
It was entertaining. We probably are getting too far ahead because we're not going racing at any of these places. But Darlington was entertaining. And partly why Darlington was entertaining to me, I love the fact that they have to paint the wall after every race. I'm not going to lie, Sean. I love how they bring that up. Yeah, I love how they bring that up in every TV broadcast. Well, they were here to the late hours in the morning painting the wall. Yep, I've seen it. And you know they get volunteers for that?
Yeah, it's quite something. I did hear about that, actually.
But think about that. When we go truck racing, they got to paint the wall twice before Sunday. 3 times, I guess, before the truck race, right?
But
what was your thoughts on the Xfinity race, though?
I was just going to get to that there, too. Overall, the Xfinity race was fairly interesting, I'd say, as it is, too. When you had Xfinity going forth right there, it had some nice action there in and of itself. It was chaotic at times, but you know what? Felt like a Darlington race as you would expect, I'd say.
I want to apologize for folks. I mentioned Brandon Jones had decent record there. I basically was kind of avoiding him. Why? Because he's been nothing but bad luck for me. I thought he gave that race away. Until that caution came out, I thought that was a pass for the lead there. Was it Austin Hill that got around him? No. Who was it that got around him there at the end? I can't remember now. And then we had the caution. And another JGR car.
JGR
Brandon
swept
Jones.
the weekend. Look at that.
They did. They swept the weekend. So hat tip to Brandon Jones. I didn't push him enough. I thought the Cup race was better, I guess, is my takeaway.
I do think it was a little bit better there overall, too. But shout out to Brandon Jones for breaking that long winless streak there, 98 races.
3 years?
So
Let's say 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, pretty much the entire time when he went to JRM and did not win a single race there. He comes back to Gibbs. Now he's back into winning form right there.
Maybe it's the cars. Just saying. Maybe it's the cars.
Also, shout out to Ross Chastain for riling more drivers' feathers up on Saturday as well.
That's who made the pass. It was Ross Chastain that got around him there at the end, and I thought it was Ross's race to lose. Were you okay? Let me ask you your opinion, Sean. Did you think Ross was being overly aggressive?
I felt like he was trying to get all that he can get. I felt like particularly the move on Bell where he could have left him a little bit more room, I think in that regard was a little overly aggressive. But I do think when he was trying to go after Chase Elliott there, and I know he was just being pretty aggressive, but I think the Bell move was a little bit more aggressive and maybe potentially over the line because it looked like he almost walled them there.
I'll have to go back and look at that one. Because overall, I guess I felt like one of the most talented drivers, he's Cup in Xfinity, one of the most talented drivers with what looked like the best or one of the best cars, for at least for part of the race, was driving hard. I really didn't think he was over the top. Well, I take that back. Now that I think about that Bell move, that was the one where he went 3 wide, right? Where he forced it down the center.
That's where he forced it down and then basically really directly got into Bell there. Unlike the Elliott move where they didn't if you look closely, they didn't make contact, but he gave them very little room. Whereas the Bell one, he pretty much just sent it in there and then they both went up.
He was like, I'm gonna get it to stick, and if it doesn't stick, well, we're both effed. I could be wrong, Sean, but you know what? It's 2 guys that are racing for a win and not points. So I feel like the fact that maybe he raced Bell a little more aggressively than should have, fair take. At the same time, why not? Neither of those guys are racing for points. They weren't impacting it'd been one thing to do that to Brandon Jones, in my opinion, who's an Xfinity regular going for the championship, than it is Bell. It's not like I thought he was malicious and tried to take out Bell, but it was kind of like, hey, we're both going for wins and nothing else. It's checkers or wreckers, and I don't care. Like I said, I feel like, and I think everybody's a little more sensitive because of the Xfinity race the week before at Martinsville. So I think it's all fresh in everybody's mind. And then I think there's part of it is, here's Ross, who's a vet we should look up to, someone that could bring some of that respect that we say we don't have. And to your point, he didn't really race that way.
Yeah, pretty much so. But still, Xfinity race, I felt like it had its moments though too, and there were certainly some talking points that we can take away from there overall. So, yeah, it had merit, I'd say. Not a bad overall weekend, I'll say.
The paint schemes were awesome. I mean, there's no doubt about that, and they did a great job covering those. Sean, when's the last time we went to Darlington and you felt like it sucked?
Not gonna lie, I felt like the only real race I could think of was maybe one of the 2020 races, perhaps, where it just was not that eventful.
That's fair. Was that where there was no crowd?
Yeah. 2020, the COVID year.
Yeah. I could see that. I guess what I'm getting at, I used to go to Charlotte all the time. I could name you a whole bunch of crappy races I saw there. Not crapping on the track, not crapping on the drivers that won. Some of those crappy races, my guy won, so to speak, won money, whatever. But I could list off plenty of races that were a stink fest. Sean, I have a real hard time doing that with races at Darlington. And it blows my mind to think that at one point NASCAR went down to one race there, because I'm sitting here and I'm going, one of the greatest finishes we'll ever discuss happened. What year was that with Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch? 2003?
That was, I think, 03 or 04.
Okay. That's going back 20 years. That's going back before we had 3 races of photo finishes and all this other stuff. And I guess where I'm going with it was that was an organic event at Darlington, and all the Darlington events are that way. We almost got that same kind of finish this year if it wasn't for Kyle Larson, right? I mean, it was going to be interesting to see if anyone was going to get to the back bumper of Blaney and try to move him or try to rob his air, whatever. Even though Byron was stinking up the show, I felt like there was still plenty of story and action. Like they mentioned it numerous times on air. The top lap leaders the last few years has not won that race. So it was almost like we were waiting for something to happen. So all this boringness of Byron leading, it was all the action behind him that we were just kind of waiting to see. We got to go to Darlington, I guess, is where I'm at, Sean.
Oh, I'm totally down for that. And you know what? I will say this, that the fact that I pointed out in the article this week about the pole sitter ended up leading a lot of laps came to fruition once again this past week. So there are some trends at Darlington that never fade away, and one of those is just the leader ending up leading a bunch of laps.
The only car that looked really, really good in non-clean air was Blaney, the guy that spent 30-some-odd consecutive laps practicing at one point. Byron, when he got back in traffic, he was going nowhere. The most dominant car all day just kind of faded into nothing. I mean, he still finished, what, third?
He finished second.
Second? But, I mean, he basically fell back to, what, 6th. Then the caution came out.
Yeah, and then basically he was, what, I think about 4th on that final restart, and then he got all the way up to 2nd there. So his car was still fairly good, just not the best. You know what I mean? It was still solid. You could tell it was like maybe a top 5 or maybe a 3rd-place car or something like that.
Sure. But he did not look as impressive when he was back. He was not moving up like we thought. Blaney, no matter where you watched, he was moving up. I mean, I feel bad for him. I straight up do. That was one of those, what do they say? Snatching, taking defeat, snatching or, out of the, I don't know. How did Hamlin, I guess, snatched victory out of the jaws of defeat, and Ryan Blaney had the exact opposite, right? He had the jaws of victory and ended up with, being defeated instead. So Anyway.
And I'm just going to put a bow on this by saying Hamlin won in that Carl Edwards throwback. Edwards was there at the track himself. And don't you think it was an interesting kind of irony considering how many times that Carl Edwards has been screwed over at the end of the races from winning, and then an Edwards throwback ends up basically getting an opportunity to steal one and does it at the end?
I forgot about that. Great call out. I am bummed Carl didn't do his backflip. It was funny. I was like, Dan, you going to do the backflip? No, Carl's here somewhere. Have him do it. That was pretty good.
That was fun. That was fun.
Well, moving on to this week. We did talk about Bristol quite a bit to start with, but we've got really no big news to talk about, right? If you want to get into the scuttlebutt on the lawsuit, feel free. Basically, the teams want to have some sort of comparison of what the NFL, NBA, etc. give their owners. NASCAR's saying, yeah, right. Just some background. All those leagues went through antitrust lawsuits, okay? So there's certain
we can get into that, but that will take us down a large rabbit hole that is going to take way too long for this show to cover. So if you want to know more about that, ask us off air in the Discord chat at Fantasy Guru, because really there is a lot of layers to all that.
And I'll say this, no matter how much we discuss and spitball, Sean, we're not going to get any conclusion on this, I'm guessing, for 2 years.
Yeah, we might start to get small bits and pieces of headway as the months go on, but the full conclusion, it may take a while. Let's put it that way.
What, the next court case, I think, is December?
Maybe.
No.
I'd have to look that up again.
I'll have to look it up, but regardless. So that's it. That's all we got for news. Hey, do we even have a points thing? Like the whole losing the lug nut but not losing the wheel, so there's no penalty for somebody? Isn't that what I read somewhere?
Well, actually, there was a penalty, only one single penalty for the entire weekend, and that was on Brandon Jones's number 20 team for literally missing a lug nut. So.
Oh my God, imagine what this was like 3 years ago, and how it would have jeopardized his win because of one lug nut, man. But didn't Brad or somebody lose a lug, or was it Kyle? Somebody lost the lug, but not the wheel. And they were able to get back to pit road, right?
Yeah, that was Brad.
That's what I thought.
That was Brad in the Cup race this past weekend.
How do you lose a lug and not the wheel? Like, I'm still baffled by that.
Hey, the wheel must have twisted in a way where it wasn't going to fall off so easily, or Brad was just driving it carefully enough that he didn't lose the wheel. I don't know.
Man, oh man. All right. Well, should we go through we're using a short track. Should we go through the list of part-time drivers?
Yeah, you know what? Let's dive in and get that part out of the way here.
So for the Truck Series, Brandon Jones, your Xfinity winner, will be in the number 1 Tricon machine. Stephen Malozzi. Why do I butcher his? I've got to stop. He's in the number 2 Rome Brothers. Nathan Bird is back in the 02 Youngs Motorsports. Norm Benning, number 6, Norm Benning Racing. He always loves to run here at Bristol. Corey Day in the number 7 Spire car, with Kyle Larson in the 07 Spire car.
Oh, yeah, and before you continue, just have to mention this, too. Remember a few weeks back at Homestead what Kyle Larson attempted to do? Well, he's trying it again this week with Bristol. Triple header for Larson, baby.
I liked his odds at Miami way better, Sean.
Yeah. Miami was definitely way better for that.
Yeah.
But he's trying again here.
Okay. Tyler Tomasi in the number 22 Rome Brothers. Luke Finhouse is back for Thor Sport in the 66. Parker Kligerman is behind the wheel this week in a Henderson Motorsports number 75 truck. Patrick Starpoli in the number 84 Cook Racing Technologies, and Justin Carroll in the number 90 Terry Carroll Motorsports machine.
For the Xfinity Series, we have Nick Lights in the number 07 this week for SS Greenlight Racing. Kyle Larson is mentioned. He's doing the Xfinity Series leg with Hendrick Motorsports here at Bristol. Justin Bonsignor is back. He's a short track ringer, as we know, in the 19 for Joe Gibbs. Corey Heim is doing double duty this week. He's in the number 24 for Sam Hunt in the Xfinity Series. Greg Van Alst is in the number 35 for Joey Gase Motorsports. Mason Massey's in the number 45 for Alpha Prime Racing. Mason Maggio is in the second Joey Gase Motorsports machine, the number 53. Tyler Tomasi is in the number 66 for Motorsports Business Management. Thomas Annunziata is in the number 70 this week for Cope Family Racing. Then we have CJ McLaughlin in the number 91 for DGM Racing, and that wraps Xfinity up.
For the Cup Series, Corey LaJoy is back in the 01 Stacking Pennies Performance Rick Ware machine. I'm kind of curious to see what he does. This is the one I'm excited about. We saw Austin Hill last week. Jesse Love gets to sit in the number 33 for RCR this week at Bristol. Look, at a short track, I'm not counting Jesse Love out of anything. And RCR has been decently fast. Well, they were for one race last year, not the other race, but I'm very curious to see. And then Josh Balicki in the number 66 for Garage 66. What are your thoughts on Jesse Love in the 33?
The only one that I'm really kind of excited about because, first of all, this is Jesse Love's Cup debut, so he's not been in any Cup race beforehand. And second of all, that's a third RCR entry, so the equipment there is going to be decent enough where maybe he might not get the best qualifying run because that third RCR team isn't as fast as the two primary teams from what I've gathered, but it can still get some place differential. And for the salary, that might be worth it consideration in DFS.
I thought Austin Hill looked pretty good on Sunday, to be honest with you. I mean, it wasn't like overly impressive, but at the same time, you know, a guy with very limited Cup experience at a very difficult track, especially for the Cup cars. I was pleasantly, I wouldn't say surprised because I was hoping we'd see a little something, but it wasn't as impressive as I was hoping for, but I thought he did a decent job. And look, you know, we love Jesse Love on these parts, man. I mean, OGB Snacks, he's your boy. We know it, but we have loved Jesse Love from the beginning. I know I was pushing him and Sammy Smith as they both were coming up. I'll be honest. After Sammy Smith, look, I appreciate Sammy Smith's honesty after Martinsville. I don't appreciate the actions at Martinsville.
You and a lot of other people did it. That's for sure.
I know. I think Mark Martin said it best. I want to be a fan of Sammy. I really appreciate the honesty. That takes a lot of balls, but yeah, you got to be better than that. And I know there's a history between the two of them, but unfortunately, Sammy, I think you're the better driver. And right now, Taylor Gray kind of looks like the more mature, the more professional guy, and that's not good for you. And I hope you fix that. I doubt you see me talking about this, but I hope you fix that because honestly, I think you're a heck of a talent. And I feel like there's just something missing between you and crew chief and getting the cars to be what you need to be because you can do this. Jesse Love took a year, but I'm telling you what, man, that number 2 team they're on something. They're working to something. I'm not sure I'm suggesting a Jesse Love future bet for the championship, but I tell you what, Sean, I think I'd like those odds, and I wouldn't put it past him.
You know, I think it's in the ballpark, really, or in the racetrack, I guess I should say, because this is racing. But there you go.
Well, which racetrack are we at? Bristol or Talladega? Because there's a big difference in tailgating and where you tailgate at these tracks. Dega, we could do it down in the infield. There ain't no infield at Bristol.
No, that is for sure. And it's funny you mentioned Bristol and Talladega because those are two tracks that Jesse Love has had some respectable results on too.
I like I said, I'm cheering for the young man. I really am. This will be fun. And I think short tracks can be an equalizer because how you carry momentum, how you roll through the corners. I feel like it's a different skill set than what we see at the big ovals, right? I feel like at the big ovals, it's a little bit different for a momentum thing versus the short tracks. And you know me, man. I love the short tracks. Give me all short tracks.
Short track racing, you know, it's short track racing.
Short track racing.
Yeah, see? Yeah. We got Junior and Hamlin. I'm with them. Give me, of which Junior and Hamlin have volunteered to go do penalties for Xfinity. I say let them have it. Have at it, boys. Let's do it.
All right, but before we get into the rest of Bristol, we got to cover the strategy aspect of this race a little bit too. So as we know, it's a short track event, so we got to keep it in mind there that leading laps is going to be a factor here, especially with the high lap count in play. So you're going to want to basically have those dominators in mind for this week's race. Yeah, I know we said dominators a lot these past couple of weeks, but these are tracks that are tailor-made for it.
William Byron got second and was by far the biggest point scorer this weekend. Wasn't even close. Was not even close, okay? So even though you didn't get the race winner, William Byron lineups were the winners. If you wanted to take down a GPP, probably cash, because he was probably 70% owned in most contests. So you had to have him. And they said it on the air. We said it on the show. The guy leading the most laps hasn't won the race. Kyle Larson led a ton of laps, 270 some last year, and finished, 12th or whatever. I don't know where he finished points-wise, but I would almost guarantee, because he led so many laps, he was probably top 5, top 7 in scoring for fantasy. So, yeah, Sean, the dominators are going to matter. Whether people are sick of hearing it or not, they're going to matter.
100%. And this is going to be another big week where that's going to come into play. I think the difference is that we may see multiple drivers end up getting up there, mainly due to perhaps potential pit and tire strategies that can come into play, because this is the type of track where that can come into play. And also, lap traffic is going to be an issue, and that could sway some of the passing within this track too, because as we know, Bristol is not one of the easiest tracks in order to make passes. So that does favor drivers that start closer to the front, because they're more likely to actually stay there instead of losing positions, unless their car is really that terrible. But I mean,
well, let's highlight a couple of differences between this and Martinsville, right? Because I think it's fair that we're employing basically a similar strategy. Would you agree? So,
100%.
Okay. Bristol is 100 more laps because they shortened Martinsville. Next time we go to Martinsville, it'll be 500. But we haven't shortened Bristol yet. So it's 500 laps for Cup, 300 for Xfinity, 250 for trucks. Okay? Obviously, for trucks, Dominators isn't as significant. 250 laps is a lot. That's a typical Cup race, much longer than a typical truck race. But in the grand scheme of things, 250 laps is half of 500. 500 is a big number. Now, they put down laps at 13 seconds at Bristol, so it doesn't take long to run off 100 to 200 laps. But to your point, we're going to have the guys up front. And I will say this, it's a little easier to pass at Bristol than Martinsville, Sean. But I'm still not chasing a bunch of place difference. The place differential I'm chasing is going to be 22nd and up, probably 25th maybe. I might, if we see Jesse Love back there, right, because we have some high hopes and the price is low, sure. I'll take a chance that he goes a lap down, maybe gets a lap back with strategy or something. Say Ryan Blaney or Denny Hamlin qualifies poorly, sure. But as a general rule, Sean, I don't know that I want to target too much back there by 30th.
Nah, if you're going to go target drivers that are going to be at least in the 30s, you're going to want to have them be inside the 20s at the very least. Or if you're targeting somebody in the 20s, you want them basically in the teens right there too.
Right. You're hoping for close to a top 10, the 13th, 12th, something like that. Yeah.
If you're trying to pick a driver that's like starting 20th, even if they end up finishing, say, 14th, that's still not a bad day. That's still a positive day. And you want to have drivers in your lineups that basically can do that kind of thing, but also give enough salary too, and consider where they start in order to basically be worth their salary. You got to kind of balance the salaries out with the expectation of how these drivers are going to perform. And I think that's really going to be what matters here.
To help illustrate why we're pushing Dominators so much, Byron led, 200 and some odd laps last week at Darlington?
Like 240-something laps.
Okay. It's a quarter point per lap led. Okay. At 200 laps at a quarter point, that's 50 points. That is significant when you figure you get 40, 43 points, 47 points for winning the race. So for fantasy purposes, moving up 6 spots, this is where I 100% agree with you, Sean. You're hoping the 6 spots, but the pricing's got to be right. Because I'm not going to pay up for someone to move up 6 spots because if I pay up, I'm trying to pay up for someone getting 100, 200, whatever laps led. 50 bonus points for leading laps. That's just 200. That's not even half of this race length, Sean.
Exactly.
That's less than half the race. And we have seen this. A stage, the last stage is 250 laps. So it would not shock me to see someone lead most of the first 100-some laps, get back to the front in the middle somewhere. I will not be shocked if we have 3 drivers that had led 100 laps. Now, last spring, complete opposite happened, right? We had a record for lap leaders. I don't think anyone led more than, 34 laps or 50 laps, something like that. That was an anomaly.
Actually, wait. We do have 2 drivers that led over 100 laps in last spring's Bristol race there.
So even still in that, we still had 2 drivers scoring. That's 25 bonus points, Sean. That's pretty significant. I mean, did anyone move up from 30th to 5th?
Closest comparable, there were only inside the top 10 in last year's spring race. There were only 3 drivers that started outside the top 20 that ended up finishing inside the top 10. Alex Bowman in 4th, who started 29th. John Hunter Nemechek, who started 26th and finished 6th. And then Chris Buescher, who finished 7th after starting 34th.
Okay, so those guys did get around the bonus points that you needed, right? But I tell you what, Buescher I can see. I don't know if I would have gambled on the other 2 at Bristol, man.
Yeah, John Hunter, that was definitely something nobody saw coming, but he actually legitimately ran pretty well in that race last year.
He did.
As for Bowman, you could say that's a little bit more predictable because that's Hendrick equipment starting that far back, and Hendrick is pretty good at this track. So, but definitely would not have been as obvious to predict as Chris Buescher, I'd say, who has a history of finishing well.
And you probably had to pay a little bit more premium for Bowman than you did Buescher. Right? I'm just illustrating. And let's be fair. Last year's spring race was an anomaly, okay? If it's any other spring race, I think that 100 laps is 150 to 200 laps, right? I mean, I think that's reasonable. But even at 100 laps, Sean, that's 25 bonus points. If you finish 3rd, you still probably are the top point getter of the weekend.
The top point getter of last year's spring race ended up being the winner, Denny Hamlin. Led 163 laps, started 3rd, finished 1st. The only other driver that led over 100 laps was Ty Gibbs, who led 137, started 19th, and then finished 9th. So
okay, what did he have for points total compared to Denny? How far off was he? Granted, Denny had a whole lot more laps led, so it's significant. I mean, there's at least 6 to 8 points there in bonus points that he missed out on.
Yeah. Gibbs had more place differential points scored compared to Hamlin because Gibbs started further back.
Yeah, because he moved up.
Hamlin led about almost 30 more laps compared to Gibbs, and then ended up getting the difference in finishing position points there, too.
Right. So, I mean, here again, PD and laps led. The bonus points are significant for fantasy. And unfortunately, I would argue place differential is the hardest to predict. It may be the easiest to hunt, like low-hanging fruit. Alex Bowman starting 29th. He's probably going to finish 14th. 4th, I wouldn't necessarily have seen. 14th, yeah, so I'm expecting 15 bonus points for him. I think that was low-hanging fruit that was probably worthwhile. We saw that with Denny Hamlin earlier this year. But overall, Sean, I think I love how you bring the notes on that about how many drivers, what they've moved up average for the year and all that when you've talked about it. Because I think there's something to that. Some teams historically qualify poorly and always run better. And I think we need to specifically look at those drivers regardless of the track because, frankly, Sean, picking place differential, I think is tough to handicap.
Oh, it is very tough, especially at this track of all places. So I will say this, that one driver that we discussed in there that I also have on my list of drivers for this week's race definitely has quite a jump in place differential. Let that be a tease to you there. So
interesting.
But in the meantime, before we get on into that kind of stuff, let's once again remind our audience that we are a part of FantasyGuru.com, so you can go over to Fantasy Guru, You can get the MLB content that is available now there. You can get content from Ray Flowers, get any of our packages, including the MVP package, for $80 for the whole year. And then we have a lot of different packages like the MVP, as mentioned, the Platinum, the VIP, or the all-in packages. Be sure to reach out to support@fantasyguru.com in order to get the best possible deal that you can get. Be nice to them. They'll hook you up and then some. So let that be known. But you know what, Rich? Let's start talking drivers here. What do you say? You in?
I'm in. Let's do it.
All right. So this is fun for me this week, too, because, well, Rich didn't put his drivers in the sheet, so I have no idea what drivers he's about to spotlight. Rich probably can look at the sheet and see who I did place there, so he could be like, and I won't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing if he agrees. So,
and I apologize. Things have just been out of control. And in all fairness, part of the reason I wasn't overly concerned, we usually overlap a lot, Sean. So I didn't mean to be unfair to you. I do try to get him in first. I try to be the guy that has him in there first. But
no, I think this is fun. I think this is fun and different for me because I go in here not knowing what to expect. So you can get legitimate reactions out of me this way.
Here's the deal. I got a lot more gut shots because I'm behind on my prep work. So my apologies to everybody. It will be done by the time the article drops, but there is some gut shot calls in here. I'm trying not to go on tilt from last weekend because I really thought the off the cuff call was going to be a money shot, man. And I'm getting real tired of 4 to 5 laps to go and my heart being yanked out, man. Like this is why Jen will not bet on NASCAR anymore for wins. She'll let me do the top 5s, top 10s. She does not want me to chase the wins because she gets so. I don't mind the racing sweat because it's longer odds, like you and I've said. Imagine a 7.5 to 1 bet in football. And we legitimately were like, this is happening, you know, and that's not even that long. I mean, we've done the 80 to 1s and the 45 to 1s. So
Hamlin,
let's go.
Hamlin, who won this past weekend at Darlington, was a 7.5 to 1 to win.
Oh, Jesus. I should have just stuck to all those odds. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you want me to give you my drivers first or do you want to go first?
You know what? I'm going to throw my drivers out there first to see how much we match there. I got Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, and I did want to give an honorable mention because I think he should be mentioned too within this group, but that's Ross Chastain. So how about those guys? What do you say?
I think those are great picks. I'm with you on Larson. I can't ignore the fact that he's racing all 3 series. In my opinion, that only helps him more for the Cup Series. I'm not on Bell. I want to be on Bell, but honestly, even though his price is high, Hamlin's on a bit of a fire of a streak, man. And I did not realize he's only 4 races away from Kevin Harvick, and he is only 7 race wins away from Kyle Busch. To me, that speaks volumes because Harvick is retired. He's certainly going into the Hall of Fame. People love to dog Denny. What about, some of the other off the field stuff, so to speak, that he's been involved with and no championships? I have constantly said Denny is underappreciated and excellent talent. The numbers are now starting to really show. So I got to go Hamlin there. I love your Ross Chastain call. I'm not ready to go there, but I tell you what, I'm going back to the well. I think Ryan Blaney's going to be on something this weekend. Penske has done decent at the short tracks. This is kind of a dirt racer's track. As you can see, Kyle Larson and Bell take well to it. I'm going to go with Ryan Blaney. And I like your call, Chase Elliott, but Sean, he's like lukewarm water to me. Like, I'll drink it if I have to, but I prefer cold water. If I got to cook with it, I guess I'll make do, but I need hot water. Like, I feel like, to your point, he's consistently been doing this stuff, but I was kind of disappointed with his run this past weekend.
My logic for Chase Elliott more so has to do with, I think that the shorter tracks are where Elliott is performing at his best this year. And really, you look back towards Martinsville, he had arguably the only car that was really like among the fastest ones there too. And he did win the Clash at Bowman Gray earlier in the year too. I know we don't think of exhibition races as
but that's a fair point. But did they get caught with it? But didn't he get caught with the cheater car at that race?
I'm not so sure off the top.
I thought there was some sort of rules violation by somebody, and we're like, it's an exhibition race. What are you going to do? I swear it was Chase, though. I could be wrong.
I'd have to go back and look that up. But I did also want to say that Chase Elliott, he did also perform solidly at Phoenix as well, too. So Phoenix uses the same rules package that we're using at Bristol. So that is what I think is going to be a factor. And I think Christopher Bell, I think I think Hamlin and Larson are the two guys to beat at this track right now. They have won the most races in the next gen car. They've won the most races in the past few years at Bristol. But I think if you wanted to go a little bit cheaper and wanted to pivot away from them, I think Bell is the guy in order to basically go against those two.
That's reasonable. I don't think that's outlandish.
Yeah, especially with how Bell, I think, has been one of the best drivers on the shorter tracks so far this season. So I think that goes hand in hand, too.
Look, JGR has been the best. I mean, they've won 5 of the 8 races. Like, Sean, if you told me you wanted to build a lineup with Hamlin and Bell and a bunch of scrubs, I wouldn't hate you for it. I mean, I would argue there's a possibility that Bell and Hamlin lead the most laps. I would make that argument for Larson. I don't know that I feel that way about Elliott yet. I don't think I'm there with Ross Chastain, but I do like the honorable mention call. Byron, I could see Byron leading a bunch of laps. I could see Blaney leading a bunch of laps. That's probably kind of where I'm at. I don't see Joey leading a bunch of laps, and maybe I'm going to eat crow on that.
Definitely not for Joey, because you know what? I firmly believe that Joey is currently cursed at this track because he either has really terrible cars at this track or he has a good car but ends up getting involved in something and ends up finishing terribly anyway. He's yet in order to have a particularly great finish at this track within like the past 4 races. His average finish is 27.8. You know who literally beats him by 0.3 positions there, Rich?
Ty Gibbs?
No. A name that you'll be like, what? BJ McLeod.
I never would have come up with that. I never would have guessed that. And granted, BJ McLeod has run decent at that track before. I get that. I'm gonna crank it up to Bristol Karma. That's what I'm calling it. Bristol Karma. Bristol is a racer's track. Joey, you can't luck your way around Bristol, baby.
In fact, only 5 drivers, well, technically 4 because one of them is tied with Joey for average finish, have finished worse than Joey, and everybody else has finished better than him since 2022 at this track. That's how bad Joey has been here finish-wise.
Unbelievable. Wow. All right. So anyway, that's where we're at with the top tier group. Do you want me to go first, or you want to go on the next one, man?
You know what? I'm just gonna try again and see how many we match with here. My mid-tier options to pick. I got Chris Buescher, Ryan Preece, and Michael McDowell. So also I did. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish. No, go ahead. Finish.
I was just going to say, remember the driver that I was teasing earlier about recent finishes have been a big jump up in place differential compared to their start position? I was particularly referring to one Chris Buescher. His average start in the last 4 Bristol races is 22.8, average finish 6.5.
Wow. I didn't realize that. Well, I was with you on Buescher and Preece. I'm 100% there. This is a perfect track for Preece, by the way. I am shocked. I feel like we got robbed in Darlington with Preece. He had the practice speeds. I like your Michael McDowell call. He has been shockingly decent on this track. I can't go there, though, Sean. I'm with you on Preece. I'm with you on Buescher, but I can't go with McDowell. I actually think going after a Hocevar or Gregson's a better way to go at that price.
You see,
Gregson
I have
is
my
at that
counterpoints. I have my counterpoints.
Go for it.
My whole thing about Hocevar in particular, he has had some solid runs at this track before. Credit where credit is due. But I think ever since that Atlanta finish now, he has been just massively struggling no matter what track we've been hitting this year. For some reason, he's just not been having performance this year, and I think that overrides it a little bit for me. And to a smaller extent, Noah Gragson too, even though Gragson I think has been a little bit better than Hocevar this season overall. It's just hard for me to trust these two unless they're put in a position where I think they can at least, the very least, move up and have good practice speeds to boot. I need to see more, Rich.
And that's fair. I'm probably hanging on to their Xfinity truck performances. They both have run well at Bristol in the other series, particularly Gragson. So that's maybe what I'm holding on to. I mean, you're not wrong, Sean. I mean, I go look at points. Do you know for DK, do you know what both Gragson and Hocevar are averaging for points per race?
I know they're not very huge numbers. That's what I remember.
No. Yeah. They're right around 16. Both of them are literally right at 16, 15.6, 16.0. Meanwhile, to your point, Michael McDowell, who we haven't talked about much, has, Austin Cindric we've talked about, and he's had some good finishes. Austin Cindric has averaged 27.4. Michael McDowell has averaged 26.5. And like I said, I was shocked to see Michael McDowell's overall finishes at Bristol. I would not have pegged him as a short track guy, but he's been relatively decent, Sean. So I'm kind of with you there. And again, both the Hocevar and Gragson, I think, are gut shots. I just think they both have more speed. I haven't seen much speed from McDowell, even when I expected it. But I'm 100% with you on Buescher and Preece. And to your point, where they qualify, Sean, is going to be a big determinant on how much I really like these guys or not.
Truly. But just to get back to the whole McDowell point right there, too, 8 races, 6 top 20 finishes, and an average finish of 17.4. The reason why I think we haven't really been on him as much, though, too, is because his starting positions there have been a little bit higher than average for the drivers that we expect out of that salary range. But even despite that, though, he scored positive place differential in about 5 of those 8 races so far this season.
That's significant, Sean. Like we were saying before about the place differential and you teasing the driver, that's significant. So you're talking me into McDowell. I'm probably going to have to see practice and qualifying. I won't be shocked if I throw a curveball, say, and all of a sudden I'm excited about Eric Jones, for example.
Truly. But it's just the history is there for McDowell. He's quietly had the performance, and he's not an obvious name. And especially for tournaments, I like that.
Well, and that rings true more than anything else, as I don't think the ownership's going to be there. So if the odds are we're going to get 5 or 6 points in place differential, and the ownership is small, and he's basically been an 80% top 20 finisher, really 17th is closer to 15th in my opinion, he kind of seems like a lock and load play, Sean.
I like it, especially Spire Motorsports equipment. He's actually been the most consistent of the 3 Spire drivers this season, too.
Yes, he has. I'm very disappointed in Justin Haley at this point. Very disappointed.
Haley just hasn't really shown as much speed as we expected him to. Hocevar, we discussed, he's kind of been very boomer bust this year, but McDowell's quietly been consistent. We got to keep that in mind.
Very true. And that pays. That pays. Let's move on to the sleepers and bargains. And I am pissed, Sean. I really thought I had a guy you wouldn't name. I'm pissed.
So you're saying that my whole list is basically all of them?
No. I'm saying there's one particular on this list that I really, really didn't think you were going to list that I was going to hammer home, and now I don't get to hammer home. So
just for context, my list is AJ Allmendinger, Zane Smith, Ty Dillon, and I'm also giving an honorable mention shout out to John Hunter Nemechek. I think these 4 are the drivers that, based on past results, I have in mind in order to basically have a relatively solid day. Now, practice and qualifying is going to sway a lot of the rest of this tier for me because really a lot of these drivers, they're either going to move up or they're not going to really move far. But it's just going to be a matter of where they start and how much of an opportunity, how much of a floor, how much of a ceiling can these drivers get. But finish-wise, these four have all been great, and I especially want to give a nod to Ty Dillon because he's also been quietly performing better than I think what we've been expecting, and nobody's really talking about it as much.
Do you remember when I mentioned Ty Dillon a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I do remember that now, and you know what? I'm now more on board with it.
That was the name I was upset about because after this past week's race, I was like, that's it. Because I've been lukewarm. Like I've mentioned him and kept saying, look, I look up at the board and I see the 10 car. And I'm like, who's in the 10 car? That's right. It's Ty Dillon. And I keep seeing him performing at speed, top 10, top 5 on a team that I'm kind of like, whatever about. Ty Dillon was the guy that I was talking about. I did not expect you to have Ty Dillon, so I was going to hammer that home, but I think you already covered that. I'm 100% with you on Ty Dillon. What you said is spot on. I think he has been underappreciated. And I am proud of the fact that at least I was lukewarm on it a couple of weeks ago and got some pushback on it. So I'm there with you. I'm kind of all in on John Hunter. I don't want to say all in, but you brought up a point about how well he ran here last year. He has done notoriously really well here in Xfinity and even in trucks, the limited trucks runs he's had. So I'm with you on John Hunter. Give me Ty Dillon. Give me John Hunter. I think they're going to be near the back. And here's a curveball for you. I know he hasn't been great here, but boy, has he quietly just been getting it done. Give me Todd Gilliland at 6,200.
You know what? That's not a bad call. He's someone that I was also considering, but his results have been mixed at this track.
It's horrible. They're all over.
Yeah, it has been mixed because he's had 2 races in 2023 where he started 30th and ended up finishing close to the top 15 in both. But then both of the 2 races last year were not that great for him. So we don't know which version of Todd Gilliland we are going to get, but it's going to really be practice and qualifying dependent.
I'm just happy that, Ty Dillon's coming back because I feel like I was going nuts. I kept seeing the speed. So to see you name it is really cool. And, there's another Ty we didn't really talk about yet, but I'm kind of feeling Ty Gibbs. The momentum's going up, and he has run very well here and just about everywhere else. He's run well at ARCA, which is a short track deal. So I don't know where you feel on Gibbs and Dillon overall that way, Sean, but I feel like Gibbs should at least be on the radar. Practice dependent, but I'm loving the fact where you're at with Dillon, at least so far.
Oh, yeah. And I do think that as far as Ty Gibbs is concerned, he is somebody that I think could be in play this week overall there, too. But there is one other thing I do want to mention to you, Rich. Have you seen this? I know some people on Twitter were discussing about this, but have you seen about Ty Dillon's place in the Cup Series standings right now?
No, I don't even know where he's at. Is he like 20th or something?
So Ty Dillon is currently 25th in the Cup Series standings. He's exactly 1 position ahead in the standings, ahead of Ty Gibbs, and 2 ahead of his brother, Austin Dillon.
Austin. On a team that nobody really gives credit at all. And Sean, you mentioned it earlier in the year. Rick Ware last year showed speed. I don't know what has changed, but look, Haley looked decent with Rick Ware last year. The Rick Ware teams this year have shown speed. Like I said, I keep looking up at the board, seeing Ty Dillon in the top 10, and I'm going, what is going on? So, look, to be fair, if you had asked me back before both the Dillon boys got their rides, I thought Ty Dillon was the better driver.
I kind of agree with that.
The funny thing is I'm guessing Grandpa or Pop doesn't agree or did Pop just give it to the older one? Like, I'm still baffled by the fact that, okay, you and I are in agreement, all right? We're not geniuses or whatever, but if you and I are in agreement, we know our stuff. Why is it we both see it that way, and yet the powers that be see it a completely other way? Or is it nepotism in the age?
Well, really, I think what happened was that when both of the Dillon boys were first coming up, Austin showed a lot of success at a very quick rate early on.
He did.
And he really looked like he was doing very well in the trucks, And then he ended up winning in Xfinity. And let's not forget, he's an Xfinity champion too.
True story. That is a very true story. So, all right. Well, let's move on. We should put a bow on the show. We're getting there, and we got to do our bets in the core four, Sean. So why don't you lead us down the home stretch?
All right. So let's do our core fours here. I got my DFS core four of Kyle Larson at 11,000 on DraftKings and 13,500 on FanDuel. I could also alternate between him or Hamlin in the spot, but Hamlin's more expensive on both sites, so I got Larson here. Then I have Ryan Preece at 7,500 on DraftKings and 7,000 on FanDuel. Michael McDowell's in the core. Yeah, surprise, surprise. He's 7,100 on DraftKings and 6,200 on FanDuel. And then put some respect on his name. Ty Dillon is the last guy I have here at 5,600 on DraftKings and 3,000 on FanDuel. I think with how he's performing, the price is not matching, I have to say.
Nope, I would agree, and I'm going to do a little different. I'm going John Hunter and Ty Dillon. I want some bottom dollar guys that maybe can swing for the fences in a GPP, and I think those two potentially are it. John Hunter's probably going to be a little more chalky depending where he qualifies. I still think Dillon's probably going to be under-owned. That allows you to go with, granted, Hamlin's only $100 more than Larson, but that allows you to go with Hamlin, and I'm with you on Preece. Maybe I go Busher between now and Sunday, Sean, but one of those two guys is going to be a part of the core.
Oh, yeah. I think it's pretty likely as well. I'm in total agreement right there.
So give me like Hamlin or Larson. I'm good either way. Blaney's in consideration for me. I want to see practice, but like I said, I've just got, maybe I'm burnt, maybe I'm on tilt and don't realize it, type of thing from Sunday. But then I really wanted to shoot with John Hunter and Ty Dillon. And maybe we see something for practice that pivots us to someone else. But, Sean, at those low prices, I'm not expecting top 10 finishes, but I wouldn't be shocked if either of these guys finished inside the top 15 or 20. And if they start 20th or back, it's going to be bonus points at their low dollar values. Sean, a 15th place finish or better is like a gravy train, right? Especially with someone like Dillon who – maybe we're wrong, but Sean, if Dillon's 8% or less, and look, he could be 0.8%. It wouldn't shock me. I mean, his ownership could be damn near under 1%. I would be shocked if it's over 10%.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly plausible here, too. You look back towards Ty Dillon's average finish in the last 4 races. Well, technically, he's only driven 2 of those. It's a 29.5 average finish, but in my opinion, that doesn't tell the full tale of what Ty Dillon's been doing for most of his career at Bristol. You look back towards the last 9 races in his Cup career that dates all the way back to 2018. I'm counting it up here. He's finished ahead of his starting position or scored neutral positive place differential in 8 of those 9 races.
That's kind of impressive.
And keep in mind, I think the finishing position is way back and way down just because more so the equipment there.
Oh, I don't disagree. And I also don't think it tells the story because there's something to be said about teams that run up in the top 10, top 15, and don't finish there. There's 2 stories being told. One, they may not be keeping up with changes. Okay, that's a possibility. But 2, which I think is more important, they have speed. Having speed over a longer run is more difficult. Having speed over the entire race is more difficult. But you can't get to either one of those levels if you don't have speed first. And until recently, Sean, when was the last time we ever saw Dillon sniff the top 10? And I feel like each of the races he's been in this year, at some point, his name is on the leaderboard, and it's not from a pit stop or not doing a pit stop when someone else is. It's, holy crap, he's racing with guys in 7th and 8th right now. What's going on?
Calling racing, I'm telling you, they've quietly stepped up a little bit this year.
They have. I think you're spot on. Sean. I don't disagree.
Especially when you mention calling racing. We talked about Ty Dillon a lot, but let's not forget his teammate, AJ Allmendinger. He's fighting for a playoff spot right now, legitimately on points. So
I forget that is very true. And honestly, SVG in his first full-time ride has been very up and down, but the ups have been kind of impressive at times.
He's with Trackhouse this year, not Kaulig anymore.
That's right. I'm thinking, for some reason, I thought he and Dinger were teammates. He's in the 88 at Trackhouse. My apologies, Sean. Why do I do that? I have the hardest times with certain teams for some reason, man.
Well, to be fair, they were teammates last year in Xfinity. So
True. At Kaulig, no less.
Yeah, pretty much. Getting through my betting core for here, I'm going to drop this real quick. I have Denny Hamlin at plus 400, Kyle Larson at plus 450, Christopher Bell at plus 650, Chase Elliott at plus 850, and a long shot of Ryan Preece at 35-1 plus 3,500 here.
I don't disagree with any of those. I like your long shot call. I'm with you on Hamlin at 4-1. I don't mind Larson or Bell at 4.5-1 and 6.5-1, but I'd really like I said, I don't know what it is, Sean, but I am having a hard time getting Blaney out of my head. And so give me Ryan Blaney at 6.5-1. It's part of my list.
I don't mind the call either. I think it's just going to be a matter of how his car is. And really, I think he definitely has the skill to get there. No doubt. But it's really going to be all about the car. That's what I think.
Yep, that's fair.
Getting into my other bets and picks here, I'm just going to kind of go rapid fire a little bit, but I have Chase Elliott top 5 at plus 110, Chris Buescher top 10 at plus 100, Ross Chastain top 10 at plus 100, Ryan Preece top 10 at plus 150, Michael McDowell top 10 at plus 350. I got 2 head-to-head bets here with Elliott versus Byron. Elliott winning over Byron at minus 150. Another head-to-head of Joey Logano versus Chase Briscoe. I'm taking Briscoe here at minus 115. You can parlay both of those head-to-heads for odds of plus 249. And then I also have, I don't usually always do it this early in the week, but I found it very enticing to do this, but a group winner parlay here. So DraftKings, there's the groups of 4 drivers there, and you pick the best finisher between all of them. I got picks in Group B, C, and D. For Group B, that's Elliott, Byron, Logano, and Briscoe. I got Elliott winning that group plus 160. Group C is Gibbs, Busch, Chastain, and Buescher. I got Chris Buescher at plus 300. Group D, I got there's Wallace, Keselowski, Reddick, and Preece. I got Ryan Preece at plus 350. You take all 3 of those picks there, Elliott, Buescher, and Preece, parlay them together, it's plus 45.80 odds. So there you go.
The only thing I've got for you is I can't stop betting Chris Buescher for a top 10. The weeks I don't bet him, he still hits it. The weeks we do bet him, he hits it. Give me Chris Buescher in a top 10. I feel like he just gets it done. I'm not there yet on Ross Chastain, but I love that call, Sean. I am going to take a larger group, or let me rephrase that. I'm going to take a longer look at the group bets and the head-to-heads after the conversation I had with Fuzzy in the Discord. After seeing kind of your approach, Sean, I want to play with that a little bit. I've been gun shy on those. I love your group bet calls, and I've been gun shy on them. I just really have. So, but give me Chris Buescher at a top 10. I'm at the point, if we're going to get plus money on him, I'm just going to keep betting it until he proves us wrong, I guess is where I'm at.
Well, that's something we both can agree with since he's on both of our lists. So there you go.
Well, suppose it's about that time to put a bow on it. But before we do, please head over to fantasyguru.com. Click the subscribe button. Check out all the different packages. Click on the one for you. We've got discounts going on, like the MVP package where it's $79.99 for 12 months. Get you all the sports that's not Major League Baseball or NFL. That gives you all of our stuff. That means from now until this date in 2026. Yes, a full 12 months. We don't shortchange you. So take a look at that. If you don't find a package that works for you, reach out to support@fantasyguru.com. Sean, you're carrying me today. I love it. I appreciate you more than you know. Keep those bets rolling, dude. You've got a little groove going. Let's keep it going. I want to be positivity for you because I'm definitely in a cold streak right now. I had that huge weekend where I basically was 100%, and now I'm like fishing for sunnies or something. I don't know what I'm doing. So we'll get back on track here. I'm excited for Bristol. Looks like you're excited for Bristol. I'm a little nervous because of last spring's race. I can't shake it out of my mind, but I also can't seem to grasp the idea of it happening again. I think you're right. Look, not only is the fall timing different, the playoff races are slightly different than the non-playoff races. So
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So,
It's Bristol, baby.
baby, it's Bristol, baby. Oh, and then Sean left us. Well, on behalf of Sean Engel, please find Sean on Twitter at SeanE247. Don't you dare follow me on Twitter. On behalf of FantasyGuru.com and the Elite Plus Network. Until next time,